Your ability to become the best version of yourself in 2024 and have the best year yet requires that you let go of society's desire to categorize you, to box you in, that you embody the idea and the philosophy of the Renaissance woman. Hey, what's up? I'm Adam if you're new here, and if you're returning, then you know what's good. Let's talk becoming the best version of yourself in 2024 using the Renaissance framework. It's so funny because I think a lot of millennials and Gen Zs battle with this idea of, I'm not sure what to do next or where to pull myself towards. And I think that's going to be a real big theme in 2024. Like, oh, I want to have this really great career and climb the ladder or a business, but I also want to find myself in Bali. I like 5-star hotels, but I also really like the idea of having a couple of dogs in a cottage, like in the countryside. Or I'm a lover of science, reasoning and business, but I also have this deep desire to be a creative. And I was very similar, and up until really recently, I thought that was a problem. I thought that was something that needed to be kind of ground out of me, like, just removed from myself. Until I understood that thing that's in all of us, or in a lot of us, is your greatest strength. And if you lean into that with what I'm going to speak about today, 2024 will be your best year yet. The things that we're going to talk about are the reason why people are financially free at the moment and living their best lives without having to compromise on their finances. It's the reason that they're being able to build meaningful and interesting connections with people and relationships that stand the test of time. It's the reason that people are able to indulge in their creative pursuits and, create these marvelous things from music to art to content. So let's just get into it. But before we go any further, I think it's important that I contextualize what the hell I'm talking about when I say the Renaissance woman. So the Renaissance was a period between the 14th and 17th centuries, specifically in Europe, that was characterized by developments in art and culture and science, right? This period almost of enlightening, and where all of these things that had been kind of suffocated and suppressed came into their fruition. They came into being at the forefront. But out of this came this idea of the Renaissance man. This stems from an Italian word that means the universal man, and I would try to say it, but I think I'm going to embarrass myself.
Uomo universale.
But the focus here was this idea that the man can be and embody the Renaissance in that he has a desire to learn and to enrich himself and never to just feel like he has to be stuck in one thing forever, but that his pursuit of multiple ideas and multiple skills and multiple interests is his superpower, and it leans into human nature. But why stop there, right? Why is this something that'd be exclusive to men? Why have we not stopped to consider the Renaissance woman and what that might look like in today's world? But one of the biggest challenges that you'll face when you try to adopt the Renaissance woman mindset is that school and work kind of doesn't set itself up or align itself with that. After learning lots of these things when you're very young, suddenly you are told that you're going to pick a subject and that you're going to study that university, take out some debt in order to learn this subject, and then hopefully you get a job based on this. And then, progress into that job, and it's a very linear path, or if you'd like, a very tunnel vision. And that is not really conducive with the Renaissance mindset, this idea of multiple pursuits, multiple passions and interests. But I'd like to take this idea of the Renaissance woman into the modern day and kind of contextualize what I'm really trying to talk about. Let's start with Rihanna. Rihanna is a good example, I think. Not the perfect, because I don't think there is a perfect example of a Renaissance woman. She started off in music. That's where her career started off. But after a few years, she started to veer off into different things, trying out different things, exploring different ideas, right? From fashion into makeup. But if you notice, society was very almost hell-bent on pushing Rihanna back into music. Like, when is the next album coming out? Well, we don't need another makeup line or this. We want another album. But despite all of this, she pursued anyway, and she continued anyway to explore these different avenues, business, marketing, all these sorts of things. Now she's exploring motherhood, right? And giving her time and her energy into that on her second child. And I think she's such an interesting case study for the Renaissance woman and what your life can look like when you put this at the forefront of your mind, of exploration, of not being fearful of trying new things and expanding beyond what the rest of the world is telling you should do. Another example is Mae Jemison, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, but she was an astronaut in NASA and one of the first black women actually to go into space, but she's also a choreographer. She really loved the arts and dance, and she was a choreographer during her time at university and beyond. She also studied African American studies. So, as you can see, she didn't say, well, I'm an engineer and therefore I have to be this one thing and I'm good at science and that's the only thing I can explore or dip into. She allowed herself to dip into different forms of art and culture and science and relationships and family. And again, this is a really, really important concept if you want to be the best version of yourself going into next year and beyond. One final example I have is somebody on YouTube called Eleanor Tabor. I've been watching her on and off for a few years, but I've always admired her range. Sometimes I watch her videos and she's talking about travel. Other times it's about finances and money. The other time it could be about finding an apartment in New York. She has a real range, all about books and, you know, things that she's interested in that sense. And she does strike me again as this individual, as a woman who has embodied this Renaissance mindset and philosophy, and she's doing very well and living a life that a lot of people would like because of it. I know I spent a lot of time trying to illustrate this, but it's really important that you understand when I say the Renaissance woman and 2024, what I'm really speaking about, because it is these sorts of things. Okay, so what actionable steps does one take in order to become this person and embody these philosophies? Well, I think the first thing is that you have to identify the sources of resistance in your life. And what I mean by this is, what are the things that are stopping you from exploring and from branching out and to considering different ideas and philosophies? What is it? For me, for example, when I was younger, I was always told that I was good at science. Well, I was objectively good at science in terms of academics. And so that was the path that I was led down for multiple reasons. And I'm not saying necessarily that that was a malicious thing. I don't think that was at all. But that became a fixation of mine, or something that was implanted and led me to make certain decisions in my life. Well, I'm good at science, and so I'll pursue this. And I inadvertently told myself that I was also bad at art, almost as though if I was good at one thing, I had to be bad at the opposite. That was a limiting belief or a point of resistance for me, because I had told myself and I had been told that this was my path. So consider the ways that resistance is showing up in your life, and it can be in different forms as well. It's not just about the people around you and what they say about you. It can take the form of fear, it can take the form of procrastination, and there's a whole video that I've done on resistance in itself. But this is the first step. The second thing that is going to allow you to become this woman in 2024 is don't wait until things are perfect to start. Now, a lot of the people that I have used as examples of Renaissance women also happen to be quite well off, and they have a lot of time freedom, which arguably will allow you to explore different things, but it's also kind of a cycle. But the point that I'm making here is you don't want to wait until those things are perfectly aligned before you start to embody this and start to adopt the philosophy, right? If you have a 9-to-5, which typically will require you to be very laser focused on one particular thing. For example, I'm an engineer, so my day-to-day, my 9-to-5 requires me to draw on a certain set of skills, typically around cloud programming, troubleshooting, and those sorts of things. However, I have a lot of more hours outside of work to also dive into things like content creation, like, you know, painting, which is something that I have spoken about before that I've started as well. Taking time to go to the theatre, but also to explore and to spend time in nature. I cannot really stress how important these things are in enriching your mind and even feeding back into, if money is very important to you, which and it is to all of us, that was dumb, you'll be surprised at how the Renaissance mindset will allow you to make more money. And this is something I'm going to do a completely different video on, how to use this framework to make money outside of a 9-to-5, but we'll get to that later. But back on to utilizing the time that you have now and not waiting. The average screen time in terms of mobile devices in the UK is 3 hours a day. 3 hours a day. Imagine you took, even if you took half of those hours, and a lot of people are on there for a lot longer than that. I've looked at mine sometimes and been like, this is embarrassing. But imagine you took an hour and a half of that, maybe even 2 hours, to do something else, to pursue something else, right? To think about things in a different way about how you want to go about life. What would that do? Imagine an hour and a half every single day. Now I'm going to try and do quick maths and work out how much that is in a week. 7? Half of 7 is 3.5. 10.5 hours a week. So that's 42 hours every month that you are now dedicating to something else. You think that you cannot achieve and grow and flourish in 2024 with 42 hours a month of exploration and diving deeper and educating yourself in something else. The next thing is all about travel and experience in the upcoming year and just before. One of the most important things that I was blessed to be able to do is travel from a very young age and be exposed to different countries, different sites, cultures, food, ways of thinking, people. And this in itself, I think, has sped up my process or my becoming of a Renaissance woman and desire to be this. Because of that exposure to things that are different, to ideas that are different, to people that are different, it allows you to conceptualize the world around you very differently and what is capable and what you're capable of doing, should I say. But I understand that international travel is not a thing for everyone. It's not a possibility for everyone, especially right now. That doesn't mean that you do not travel and explore. I have seen a fraction of London. So the city that I was born in, I don't even know what fraction, but I know that there is so much of London alone that getting, like a day pass or, whatever a day cost of travel, maybe it's £8. I don't even know what it costs right now. £8 and exploring the city that I'm in or exploring the country. I've never been to Scotland. I may have flown to Vietnam. I don't know what Scotland looks like. That's crazy. So the exploration and the travel element of this and removing yourself from your everyday environment doesn't have to be across the world. It can start by across your city, right? It can start by across your country, right? Within your continent. Next, let's talk about seasons, because you're going to go into 2024 and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by this idea of the Renaissance woman and that she's doing loads of different things all the time. And this is where the concept of seasons becomes very important. The Renaissance was a period between the 14th, roughly, and the 17th century. We're talking centuries, like hundreds of years. So I think it's very helpful to look at your life as the Renaissance, right? This is your life, this is your Renaissance. And so it's not about doing everything tomorrow. It's not even about doing everything before January in 2024 or even throughout that year. But it is understanding that 2024 is 1 year in your Renaissance for you to explore and do certain things. But again, don't feel like you have to or that you even should have 17 things on your plate at once. You can prioritize and you will start to focus on different things for like 3-month periods. Right? Okay, for the next 3 months, this is where my focus is going to be. This is where I would like to spend some time exploring and diving deeper into or cultivating. And then the next 3 months or 6 months might look very different. Now let's talk about networking in a little bit more depth, because I spoke about it in terms of travel and meeting new people. But one thing we often talk about is diversity and the power of diversity. But often, or something that isn't spoken about as much, is diversity of thought. Yeah, there may be other markers and metrics of diversity that we use, but let's talk about diversity of thought. If you want a different 2024 to the rest of your years, you're going to have to talk to different types of people and engage with different thoughts in order for you to evolve and start to, again, become that Renaissance woman. This is where things are going to start to get uncomfortable because you're going to need to leave the circles that you are in every day. You're going to have to take yourself out of those and into spaces that you haven't been before in order to interact and network with people that you've not interacted with. It could be as simple as every single month you are going to go somewhere that you haven't been before and a different space. So whether you're usually at bars or you're usually at the library or wherever you're usually at, make a list of places that you feel like you want to go into the year. And when you see things that, jump up on TikTok or whatever, write them down and cultivate a list of places that you would like to explore and go there with an open mind that you may be meeting people. This is a really key thing. It could be networking events. Obviously, they're very particular to engaging people, but they don't always have to be networking events. A lot of the time I meet people, it is just on a whim. Like I'm out somewhere, maybe somewhere I've never been before. And you meet someone or you strike up a conversation, maybe over a coffee or something like that. Things like this do happen when you're open to them happening. So that's all well and good. But it's going to be very important then if you are interacting with other people, that your communication is as optimal as possible. One of the really important parts of the Renaissance was the sharing of ideas, right? And this allowing of ideas to flow freely and developments and even peer review, which means your ability to communicate your ideas and your desires and even your boundaries is going to be super important in 2024. Right? Your ability, whether it's going to be in written communication or verbal communication, or you write blogs or you're talking to somebody face to face, how well are you? Not that well, because clearly that wasn't even English, but how are you able to articulate your ideas? Are you able to? Do you find that it is easy and free flowing? Or is this somewhere that you need to spend time? Like this is a really, really important part because it's not just about, oh, I want to write a blog post. It's also about in your everyday life. Are you able to communicate to your partner what you need? Are you able to communicate to your family, to your friends, to your boss? And this is how you start to see how the philosophies and the ideas of the Renaissance permeate different parts of your life. Now, in terms of building this out, it can go from, daily journaling and things like that and blogging. I think it's really good if the activity that you're doing can be observed in part by others so that you can get feedback. Journaling is a very, solo exercise and it's really for you. But doing things like blogging or making content or even speeches, even acting and going to acting classes, if that's something that you like, and you've thought about exploring, why not? Like, that's a great way. Acting and acting classes is a great way to cultivate the skill of getting an idea across, I think, personally. And it's something that I used to love doing. I used to love drama at school. But it's another way that you can start to flesh out some of those communication skills that you're hoping to develop. I don't know why, as I started talking about communication, my ability to actually communicate ideas just poof. But it doesn't actually stop there. And this is where giving back and sharing is a really important part of your 2024. So I already spoke about how this idea of letting ideas flow freely and communication was a really important part of the Renaissance. And again, you're going to find that it is very important to not only nurturing you as an intellectual, but also your soul. Like, I think something happens when you give and you share things freely, not necessarily with an intent to get something back. Like this idea of, I've learned something, or I want you to understand something, and so let's share. But that can also be from the volunteering aspect, like I have these skills and I would like to give them to others who may be less fortunate than me, but also to on the other side, I have a business idea and I have these skills that I want to turn into a business, a service, a product. And again, that's going to be a separate video. So I'm almost finished, but the final thing I want to talk about is the importance of physical activity and overall health in 2024 and your Renaissance era. The body and the mind are often spoken about as if they are two separate entities, as though the mind is not in the body, right? As though it does not require nutrients and exercise and attention in order to flourish. And a lot of the things that I've spoken about today are optimal when you are of sound, healthy mind. And so physical activity and nutrition are going to be so important again in 2024. And beyond, if we're being completely honest. But in terms of this Renaissance woman that we are cultivating and embodying, she is an overall package, right? She is somebody who's not only just focused on the flourishing of her mind, but understands that her mind and her body are one. They are connected. And thus time and effort and energy must go into that. So wrapping this all up, the world is changing rapidly. I mean, if we just spoke about AI, we could go on for ages and ages and make about 50 videos on that alone and how it may impact all of us and our jobs and the way that we communicate and the things that we do. The reality is 2024, we don't know what's coming. But we do know that the ideas and the philosophies of the Renaissance permeate through society and in success in multiple realms, from money to relationships to health. And so entering 2024 and preparing for 2024 from now, if you can carry these ideas and some of these foundational thoughts and principles and actions into the new year, I think you'll be well placed. I'll see you in the next video.